And so it's so interesting as we get into John 13, we get to notice something. I want you to hear it again. He says this, he says in verse 33, little children, I am with you a little while longer. You will look for me, and just as I told the Jews, so now I tell you, where I am going, you cannot come. And then Peter, who's hard-headed like myself, he says this, Lord, Simon Peter said, where are you going? And then the Lord said, where I am going, you cannot follow me now. Listen to the depth of what has taken place. Do you remember Jesus' first words to Simon Peter? Follow me. And Peter did it. And yet here in this moment, Jesus' almost last words to Peter, you can't follow me. Why would this happen? Why would this take place? You think about all the places that Peter has been with Jesus. You think about after they go through all these trials and after they go through all this turmoil and there's all this separation. You think about what Jesus did. He pulls away, he goes to Bethany, and who's with him? Peter, James, and John. And he gets to be there in this middle of the season where they desperately needed rest and they desperately come back and just abide in God the Father. And then you think about another time, there's this moment where they climb up on the Mount of Transfiguration and they're there and suddenly the glory of God is revealed in Jesus Christ. The full deity is displayed as suddenly his face is shining. It's so radical, so amazing. And they're looking, they're saying, how can this be? And Peter jumps out. It's Peter, James, and John on this mount together. And he says, oh, let's stay here, Lord. Let's stay here. And you remember this moment as they say, let's stay here. And he says, let's build shelters so that we can stay in the glory and the presence of God forever and ever and ever. And then you think about another season where Peter, James, and John were. And Peter, James, and John, they go with him, they follow him. And suddenly there's Jairus' daughter who's dead. And Jesus brings her back to life. So if Peter has been in all these places in seasons of rest after turmoil, if he's been there and seen the full glory of God and Jesus displayed and revealed, if he's been there when suddenly death becomes life, why can't he go here now? Why is Jesus saying, you can't go after saying, follow me? This is the whole invitation, like, follow me, follow me. And you think about the makeup of these men. You think about Peter, this bold follower of Jesus that was so bold when it came to him to die. He says, no, don't crucify me like my Lord, but instead upside down. I'm not even worthy of dying like Jesus. You think about Peter, James, and John, you think about James. The first one that is going to give his life, the first of the apostles, that's going to give his life for the glory of God, for the spread of the gospel. And it's James. And then you think about John, the last one to die. So you have this incredible combination of these leaders that Jesus has been intentionally pouring into his life and being intentional in everywhere that they go. So why is it suddenly that he looks at them and says, just as I told the Jews, now I'm telling you, you can't go. And Peter says, where are you going? We've been everywhere with you, right? Why can't we go? And he says, I'm telling you, where I'm going, you can't follow me. And if we would take time to turn and remember the Old Testament, then suddenly all of this conversation makes sense. Because everyone would know that on the Day of Atonement, which has started now, right here in John 13, everybody would know that the high priest went alone into the Holy of Holies, making atonement for the sins of his people. And it wasn't the high priest and all the other people that were following the high priest. It wasn't close friends of the high priest. It wasn't close disciples of the high priest. It was just the high priest alone. And in this moment, Jesus is being called as the high priest to go and make sacrifice, give atonement, give forgiveness, be gracious to his people. And that's why he's saying, where I'm going, you can't come. It's because it's only the high priest can go into the Holy of Holies. Only the high priest can absorb and drink from the cup that I'm drinking from. And the cup that I'm drinking from, you don't want. And this is that moment where he's saying, you can't go with me to the cross because it's one sacrifice for all sin. You can't go with me to the cross because it's the perfect, spotless Lamb of God. You can't go with me because it's only through the Son, through his blood, through his sacrifice, and through him being laid in the tomb, and through him going to the Holy of Holies and being raised up in the resurrection and the power. And that's why Jesus says this in John 13, and he says this, he says, why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you. But he tells him, he says, where I am going in verse 36, you cannot follow me now, but you will follow me later. In the book of Hebrews, the author puts it like this. He says that we come into the Holy of Holies, that we can now approach with boldness the throne of grace. We can come into the Father's presence. How? Through his flesh, through his blood. This is that moment where now we have access because our high priest paid the debt for us. So when he looks at Peter and he looks at James, he looks at John, he says, you can't follow me. And then Peter says, why? And he says, you can't follow me now. It's because Jesus is the only high priest. He is the only one that can make atonement for our sin. He is the only one that can take our cross, take our tomb, take our veil, and rip the veil from top to bottom so that we would have access, so that one day we can come where he's taken us.